Part 1. The Meeting. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky with shades of orange and crimson. In a small town where time moved slower than the bustling cities, a young woman named Elara walked through the cobblestone streets. Her hands clutched a small notebook, filled with sketches of dreams she had yet to live. Elara wasn't just an artist. She was a seeker of something more, though she couldn't name what it was. That evening, fate had its own plans. At the town square, where a fountain whispered its eternal song, she collided with a stranger. A seeker of something more, though she couldn't name what it was. That evening, fate had its own plans. At the town square, where a fountain whispered its eternal song, she collided with a stranger. A tall man, with gentle eyes that carried the weight of untold stories. His name was Adrian. Their eyes met for a brief moment, long enough to feel something shift inside, as though the universe had whispered, "Here. Here is where your story begins." "Forgive me," Adrian said softly, steadying her as her notebook slipped. He picked it up, glancing at the sketches of wildflowers and distant mountains. "These are beautiful." Elara smiled, shy yet curious. "They're just pieces of what I see and what I feel." And so began a conversation that neither expected. About art, about books, about the quiet beauty of small towns. Neither realized that hours had passed until the fountain lights flickered on, casting golden reflections on the water. It was only the beginning, yet both knew, somehow, that their lives had just changed forever. Part 2. The Bond Grows. The days that followed their first meeting were filled with an unusual brightness, as though the air itself carried a secret melody only they could hear. Elara often found herself drifting back to the fountain in the evenings, sketchbook in hand, pretending she was there to draw, but deep inside, she was hoping Adrian might appear. And often, he did. Adrian wasn't from the town. He was a traveler, a man who carried more miles on his shoes than most carried in their memories. Yet, unlike other wanderers who simply passed through, he lingered, and in his lingering, Elara found something she had never experienced before: a mirror. They walked together through the winding streets, past flower stalls that filled the air with the scent of roses and marigolds. They spoke of books, of the stars, of what it meant to be alive. Adrian had a way of listening that made Elara feel her words carried weight, like her thoughts mattered in a way she had never believed before. One evening, as they sat on the steps of an old library, Elara asked, "Why do you travel so much? Don't you ever want to stop somewhere to belong?" Adrian's gaze lingered on the horizon before he answered, "I thought I was searching for a place. But now I think maybe I've been searching for a person." Elara's breath caught in her chest. The words hung between them like a fragile flame. She didn't reply, but her silence spoke volumes. That night, she returned home and sketched something new, not mountains or flowers, but a pair of eyes. His eyes. The bond was no longer just growing. It was weaving itself into the very fabric of their souls. Part 3. The First Confession. The summer evening was alive with a soft, golden glow. The kind of light that makes the world seem almost magical. Lanterns flickered along the streets. Children's laughter echoed through the marketplace, and the air was filled with the warm scent of fresh bread and jasmine. Elara and Adrian found themselves walking side by side, their steps unhurried, as though time itself had decided to slow down for them. They reached the meadow just outside the town, where tall grass swayed like ocean waves, and the sky stretched endlessly above, painted with streaks of orange and violet. It was there, in the quiet hush of twilight, that their hearts began to speak more loudly than their words. "Tell me something," Elara said softly, her fingers brushing the petals of a wildflower. "What would you like to know?" Adrian asked, turning to her with that steady gaze she had come to crave. "Why me?" Her voice was gentle, almost uncertain. "You've seen so many places, met so many people. Why spend your evenings with someone like me?" Adrian paused. For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, With a voice deep and sincere, he said, "Because when I sit with you, Elara, the world finally feels like it stops spinning. I don't feel like a traveler or a stranger. I feel home." Elara's heart fluttered wildly in her chest. No one had ever said such words to her before, words that felt less like compliments and more like truths carved into stone. She tried to laugh, to brush it off, but her voice trembled. "You don't even know me fully." Adrian stepped closer, his shadow mingling with hers under the fading Sunday. "Then let me spend my days knowing you. Let me learn every silence, every smile, every dream you've ever hidden away, because I think—" He hesitated, his breath catching. "I think I've found the piece of my life I didn't know was missing." Elara's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of an overwhelming joy she had never dared to imagine. She had always believed love stories belonged to other people, to books and songs. But here, beneath the twilight sky, she realized hers had begun. With a trembling smile, she whispered, "Adrian, you don't know how long I've waited for someone to see me like this." He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The world grew silent, the crickets, the wind, even the rustling grass, as though nature itself bowed in reverence to their moment. And though neither said the three sacred words, both felt them echoing in their hearts. "I love you." It was not spoken, but it was known. That night, Elara returned home and painted the sky she had seen, not just the colors of twilight, but the colors of her heart, alive for the first time. Adrian, lying beneath the stars in his small inn, replayed every word, every smile, until sleep finally claimed him. They were no longer two souls drifting. They were now tethered, drawn by an invisible force stronger than time or distance. The first confession had been made, not in words, but in truth. And that truth would change everything. Part 4. Trials of Distance. Love is never without its tests. Just when Elara and Adrian's hearts had found each other, life reminded them that every bond must be tempered by fire. The summer was drawing to a close, and with it came the whispers of Adrian's obligations. He was not just a wanderer of choice, he carried duties that pulled him across distant lands. One morning, as the dawn painted the town in soft hues of pink, Adrian found himself standing at Elara's door. His face, though calm, carried a weight she had not seen before. "Elara," he began, his voice low, "I must leave for a time." Her brush slipped from her hand, streaking paint across the canvas. She looked at him, her heart tightening. "Leave?" she repeated, barely more than a whisper. "There are promises I made before I ever came here," Adrian explained. "People waiting for me, work left unfinished. I can't abandon it." "But—" He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I don't want you to think this changes what I feel for you." Elara's breath shook. She wanted to be strong, to nod and smile, but the fear of losing what she had just found burned in her chest. "How long?" she asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Weeks, perhaps months. But I swear, Elara, I will return." Her world tilted, and for the first time, silence between them felt heavy. Yet beneath the ache, she saw the truth in his eyes. This was not abandonment, but a trial, a test of patience, faith, and the strength of what they had begun. That night, as the moonlight spilled across her room, Elara sat before her canvas. She painted not the meadow, not the sky, but Adrian's face, the warmth of his gaze, the promise in his smile. Meanwhile, Adrian packed his few belongings. As he folded the simple cloak he always carried, he held in his mind the sound of Elara's laughter, the way her presence felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. They met once more before he left. In the meadow where their first confession had been born, Adrian took her hands in his. "Elara," he said, "distance cannot silence the truth we've spoken. Let this sky be our witness. Whenever you look at the stars, know that I am beneath them too, thinking of you." Her eyes glistened, but she managed a trembling smile. "And I will be waiting, Adrian. Not as someone left behind, but as someone holding a piece of you safe until you return." The days that followed stretched into weeks. Elara filled her hours with painting, pouring her longing and hope into every brushstroke. Each canvas became a letter, a prayer, a whisper of her heart. Adrian traveled roads lined with strangers and shadows, but in every step he carried her with him. The world felt less lonely, because he knew somewhere someone was waiting. And though distance stood between them, their bond did not weaken. Instead, it grew roots unseen, but strong, burrowing deep into the soil of trust and faith. Love was no longer just a feeling, it was a vow. Part 5. Letters of the Heart. Distance could separate their hands, but it could not silence their souls. In absence, love found a new voice. One made of ink, paper, and whispered words carried across the miles. Elara sat by her window one evening, moonlight spilling across her desk. A sheet of parchment lay before her, blank and waiting. She dipped her pen into ink, her heart trembling, and began to write. "Adrian, though the nights feel longer without you, I find comfort in knowing we look upon the same stars. I paint every day with the memory of your laughter in my heart. The meadow still blooms, though it waits for your footsteps. Until then, my brush and my heart remain yours." She sealed the letter with a small flower pressed inside a fragment of the meadow where they had once stood together. Far away, after days of weary travel, Adrian received her words. As his eyes traced her handwriting, he felt her presence as though she stood beside him. He touched the pressed flower gently, whispering her name to the wind. He replied at once, "Elara, the road is long, but your words are my compass. When I close my eyes, I hear your voice guiding me. I carry you with me in every breath. And though I walk in distant lands, my soul rests only with you. Do not count the days, for every sunrise brings me closer to returning." Weeks passed, and with them came more letters. Elara's words spoke of her paintings canvases filled with skies that seemed to wait for Adrian, meadows blooming with his return. She confessed her fears too, but always ended with hope. Adrian's replies carried stories of his travels, of rivers that reminded him of her laughter, of sunsets that made him ache for her presence. He told her how he whispered her name into the night, letting the stars carry it back to her. Their letters became more than words. They were lifelines, binding two souls stretched across distance. One evening, as Elara painted, she realized something profound. Though Adrian was far away, he was still shaping her life. Her brushstrokes carried his memory. Her strength grew from his promises. Love was not weakened by distance. It was being deepened, refined, turned into something eternal. And Adrian, walking beneath unfamiliar skies, knew the same truth. Love was not a fleeting moment in the meadow. It was in every choice to hold on, every word written, every silent prayer. They both began to realize their story was not about waiting for love to return. Their story was proof that love had already arrived, and nothing, not even miles, could take it away. Part 6. The Return. Winter's breath had softened, and spring was unfolding across the land. The meadow where Adrian and Elara had once stood together bloomed again, wildflowers opening like promises kept. Elara stood there one morning, her shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders. She had painted this very scene so many times in his absence, but now, standing within it, she felt a strange stillness. Her heart whispered, could this be the day? Far along the road, a weary traveler walked with steady steps. His clothes bore the marks of journeys long and hard. His eyes, though tired, carried light, a light fueled by every letter, every memory, every dream of home. It was Adrian. As he crested the hill overlooking the meadow, he stopped. The sight stole his breath. Elara, framed by flowers, bathed in sunlight, just as he had remembered in every heartbeat of longing. Elara turned, as though some unseen hand had guided her eyes. And there he was. For a moment, time faltered. The world fell silent, no bird's song, no rustle of grass, just the space between two souls meeting again. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Tears welled in her eyes. She took one step forward, then another. Adrian dropped his pack, the weight of months sliding from his shoulders. His pace quickened, then broke into a run. They met in the middle of the meadow, breathless, trembling, unable to speak. His arms wrapped around her, and hers around him, as if they had never been apart. Elara whispered first, her voice shaking. "You came back." Adrian pulled her closer, his voice raw. "I never truly left. Every step I took, I carried you with me." She leaned into him, feeling the truth of it in the steadiness of his heartbeat. "I was afraid the world would change us." Adrian smiled softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "It has, but only to remind us that love is not fragile. It grows stronger with every test." They spent hours in the meadow that day, speaking, laughing, sitting in silence that felt richer than any conversation. Each glance wove their hearts together again. Elara showed him the paintings she had made, hidden safely in her satchel. Canvases of skies, rivers, and meadows, all reflections of him. Adrian told her of the roads he had walked, the strangers he had met, the lessons learned. But all of it, they realized, was merely background to the truth standing before them. They were home, in each other. As the sun dipped low, casting golden fire across the field, Adrian took her hand. "Elara," he said, voice deep with certainty, "I don't want to write love in letters anymore. I want to live it every day, by your side." Elara's smile glowed through her tears. "Then promise me, no matter where life leads, we walk it together." And with the fading light as their witness, they sealed that vow in silence, for sometimes the most powerful words are spoken without sound. Part 7. The Promise of Forever. The days that followed their reunion seemed touched by magic. Every sunrise felt like a gift, every sunset like a prayer answered. Adrian and Elara no longer spoke of someday. They lived in the now, a present so rich that even the future bowed quietly before it. A simple life, rich in love. They made a home together, not of grandeur but of warmth. A small cottage near the meadow, its windows open to the song of birds and the laughter of the wind. Elara painted the walls with soft colors of dawn and dusk. Adrian carved shelves and chairs with his own hands, each piece shaped with care. They filled their home with stories, hers on canvas, his in words and memories. And when silence settled between them, it was never empty. It was the language of two souls at peace. Love in little things. Adrian would bring wildflowers from the fields, tucking them into her hair as she laughed. Elara would place sketches by his bedside portraits, of him not as a hero, but as the man she saw in quiet moments. They cooked together, sang old songs by firelight, and walked hand in hand beneath starlit skies. Love, they realized, was not found in grand gestures alone. It was in the brushing of fingers, the comfort of shared silence, the way their eyes found each other in a crowded market. A night under the stars. One evening, they lay on the grass outside their cottage, gazing up at the heavens. The stars stretched endlessly above them, a mirror of the countless moments they wished to live together. "Elara," Adrian said softly, "when I was away, I feared distance would turn our love into a memory. But now I see," he paused, turning to her, "it was never distance that mattered. It was the thread between us, invisible, unbreakable." Elara's eyes glistened in the starlight. "That thread is eternity, Adrian. Even time cannot cut it." She reached for his hand, and together they traced constellations, their own names written among the stars. The promise. On a quiet morning, as sunlight spilled gently through the meadow, Adrian held her close and whispered the vow that had bloomed in his heart for years. "Elara, my love, I promise to be your strength when you falter, your shelter in storm, your laughter in sorrow. I promise to love you not only when days are easy, but also when they are hard. I promise, forever. Elara pressed her forehead to his. And I promise to walk with you through every season, to hold your dreams as mine, and to love you in ways words will never fully carry. Forever, Adrian. Forever. Their vows did not echo in temples or grand halls. They whispered them beneath the sky, with the earth as witness, the wind as choir, and love itself as their seal. From that day, their story was no longer just about longing or reunion. It was about choosing each other every day. And so began the true journey of their love. Not fragile, not fleeting, but eternal. Part 8. The Trials of Life. Even the strongest love is not spared from the trials of living. Adrian and Elara soon learned that forever was not made of endless sunny days, but of holding hands through storms. The first storm. A harsh winter swept across the land. Snow blanketed their meadow. Winds rattled their cottage, and food became scarce. Adrian, determined to provide, walked miles through frozen forests in search of wood and game, his hands cracked with frost, his body weary. Yet every time he returned, Elara's smile healed him more than fire ever could. But there were nights when even his strength faltered. He feared failing her. He feared not being enough. One night, as he stared at the dwindling fire, Elara sat beside him and placed her hand on his chest. "You are not alone, Adrian," she whispered. "Love is not a burden for one to carry. It is two souls, sharing the weight." Her words melted the ice inside him more than the flames could. From then on, he let her share the struggle together, gathering wood, together keeping hope alive. The wave of doubt. Years passed. The meadow bloomed again. Their days warmed with laughter. Yet life is never still. Whispers from the town reached Adrian's ears. Some said he could have had a more successful life in the city, that his choice to remain in a quiet cottage was a waste of his talents. At night, those words haunted him. Had he chosen wrongly? Was Elara's love enough? But one evening, he watched her paint by candlelight. She was creating not a canvas, but their life itself, each brushstroke a memory, each color a reflection of their love. "Elara," he said softly, "what if I had chased more? What if I could have given you more?" She looked at him, her eyes filled with calm certainty. "You gave me everything I ever wanted you. What could the world offer me greater than that?" The doubts faded, replaced by the truth. Success was not in wealth or status, but in the life they had built together. The test of time. With time came illness. Adrian fell sick one autumn, his strength slipping like leaves from the trees. Days blurred into nights, pain gnawed at him, and for the first time, he feared not for himself, but for Elara. What if she had to face the world alone? But Elara never left his side. She read to him, sang to him, painted his dreams, so he could see beauty, even through fevered eyes. "You once promised me forever," she whispered, holding his hand tightly. "And I promise you this, I will never let you face a single day alone, not even this." Her unwavering love became his medicine. Slowly, strength returned, and with it, a deeper bond. For they had walked through the valley of shadows and emerged stronger. Through every storm, doubt, and sickness, Adrian and Elara learned this. Love is not proven in fair weather, but in how it endures the tempests. Their love was no fragile flame. It was a steady fire, tested, tempered, and eternal. And so, as seasons turned, their story grew not only in beauty, but in depth. They had faced life's trials and stood unshaken, bound by promises whispered under the stars. But their journey was not done, for ahead awaited something even greater, the legacy of their love. Part 9. The Legacy of Love. Love, when true, does not end with two people. It ripples outward like rings upon a still lake, touching lives far beyond its origin. Adrian and Elara's story was no different. Seeds of tomorrow daughter. Years passed in the meadow cottage. What began as two hearts finding shelter in each other grew into a legacy of warmth. Neighbors often visited, drawn not by wealth or grandeur, but by the quiet radiance of their home. Children from the nearby village would gather to hear Elara's stories, tales of hope, courage, and kindness. Adrian, though modest in speech, taught through action. He helped farmers mend their tools, guided the young in learning the art of patience, and shared wisdom born of trials endured. One evening, a little boy asked Adrian, "Why do you and Elara always smile even when life is hard?" Adrian glanced at Elara, who was painting by the window, her eyes glowing like the sunset. He bent down and whispered, "Because love makes even the hardest days worth living." The brushstrokes of eternity. Elara's paintings grew more profound with age. She no longer painted mere landscapes but emotions. The laughter of a child, the tenderness of a touch, the quiet resilience of a storm survived. Each canvas became a fragment of their love. Some adorned village homes, others traveled far, carrying whispers of their story to places they would never walk. Her art became more than beauty, it became memory. Even as time etched silver into her hair, her brush carried the colors of forever. The gift of time. One spring morning, as blossoms swayed outside, Adrian and Elara sat beneath the oak tree where their journey began. Their hands, wrinkled yet steady, intertwined as always. "Elara," Adrian said softly, "one day, the world will move on without us." She smiled gently, her eyes reflecting the wisdom of years. "Yes, Adrian, but love never dies. It lingers in every smile we inspired, in every kindness we shared. That is our forever." And she was right. For their love was not chained to time, it was carved into the very soul of those who knew them. The echo beyond. When the seasons finally took them, they left not silence, but echoes. Villagers told their story to their children, who told it again to theirs. Elara's paintings hung as silent testaments. Adrian's wisdom lived in acts of compassion. And somewhere, when lovers walked hand in hand under starlight, they whispered promises, just as Adrian and Elara once did. Because love, true love, is immortal. The legacy defined Adrian and Elara's legacy was simple, yet eternal. Not riches, not fame, but a life lived with unwavering love. They taught the world that to love deeply is the greatest success, to endure together is the greatest victory, and to leave behind a trail of kindness is the greatest legacy of all. And so, dear listener, their story whispers to you as well. Love fiercely. Hold on through storms. Create beauty in small moments. For long after we are gone, it is love that remains. Epilogue. The eternal song of love. There are stories that live for a moment, and then there are stories that live for eternity. Adrian and Elara's love was not the kind written only in books, nor painted only on canvas. It was written in the wind that passed through their meadow, in the sunlight that fell upon their home, in the laughter of children who carried their tales. The universe remembers. When they left this world, it seemed, for a moment, that silence had fallen. But the universe does not forget love. The meadow still blooms with wildflowers each spring, as if their laughter lingers in every petal. The oak tree still stands tall, whispering the secrets of their promises to the stars. And in the village, when dusk falls, people still tell the tale of two souls who chose love above all else. They changed it with kindness, patience, and devotion. And that, dear listener, is the truest power of all. The echo for you. As you listen now, their voices reach across time, not to tell you what love should be, but to remind you of what it can be. When you hold someone's hand, hold it tightly. When you find beauty in the small things, cherish it deeply. And when life tests you with storms, remember that love can be the anchor that holds you steady. Because in the end, when everything else fades, it is love that whispers to eternity, "We were here, and we loved."